Hello, and welcome to Building High Performance Cultures, a weekly series where we talk to executives from top organizations about how they've built high performance cultures and how they're leveraging their culture as competitive advantage. I'm Marty Parker, the President and Chief Executive Officer of Waterstone Human Capital, and my guest today is the Chairman, CEO, and Managing Partner of the Oppenheimer Group, otherwise known as Oppie, John Anderson. Welcome, John.
Thank you, Marty. Nice to be here.
Nice to have you here. Now, a little bit about John. John is the 2017 winner of our Canada's Most Admired CEO, the CEO program in the enterprise category. And Oppie, the organization that he leads, is a two-time Canada's Most Admired Corporate Cultures winner, and most recently this past year in 2019. And so, John, maybe we'll start with having you take us back a little bit and tell us a little bit, for those who may not be familiar with Oppie, about the business, who they are, and maybe a little bit to start us off about the culture that you and the team have built there over the years.
Sure, yeah. So Oppie is the oldest operating company in the province of BC at 162 years old. So been around a long time. But having said that, when I joined the organization now 45 years ago, it was one office with about $7 million in sales and just a little bit in produce. It was mainly in grocery. So went about developing, we're now in 27 countries around the world from a sourcing point of view, and have over 1,100 customers that we sell to in both Canada, the United States, Europe, and Asia. And so quite a global company, a little over $1.1 billion in sales. And we kind of look at it like we, as of today, feed about 4.5 billion servings of fresh fruit and produce around the world. So a pretty good chunk of the world eats our product on an annualized basis. So yeah, I mean, in doing that, I started, Marty, in the very bottom of the organization, unloading trucks and 100-pound sacks of potatoes and believe it or not, salt, 50-pound sacks of salt. Back in those days, I was actually in pretty good shape compared to today. I think I'd struggle to do that. But what it did, it allowed me to really recognize how critically important each job in the organization was. And how that as I worked my way through the process, how critically important developing a culture that kind of matched up with what you thought the organization should be. Because you can either develop one or it gets developed for you.
Right. And
so therefore, I went along a path of actually going around to all our people and talking about what kind of a culture do we want in the organization, and then developing those attributes and those definitions of that culture, and then putting those into place. And so that took, that started in the early 90s, I would say. And back in those days, I remember if you did a survey of how important culture was to your organization's success, you would have got 92% of the CEOs saying irrelevant, didn't matter. To today, where they probably say 98% of those CEOs would say it's absolutely critical to your organization going forward. So it's then again the kind of organization you want to have. We're an entrepreneurial organization. You have to be sustainable in terms of growing products from all around the world, and so you need to be nimble, you need to be quick, and you need to be really good at nurturing resilience and innovation and collaboration, and having the speed of communication with transparency is all stuff we've had to develop to get to where we are today.
Has that culture changed much since those early days of that kind of deliberate planning of this is what we're going to do?
That's a really interesting question, Marty, because when I went around to the offices and talked to people and talked about the kind of culture that we wanted to have, everybody had had an opinion. I clearly knew what we wanted, but I wanted to make sure everybody was included and could help fine tune it. And what they said to me back then was the kind of culture that they felt we had then. The concern they had is as our business got bigger, that we would lose that culture and it would change and morph into something that wasn't really all that great. I have to tell you that, and part of that was really a family type business, right? And caring for people and people having a voice and people being included in the processes and all those things. I would say the culture today, after all these years, 20 some odd years, almost 30 years of developing this thing, is better than it was when we first started it.
Wow. So on that, why is it better? What has made it better than when you first started?
You know what? I think there's a couple of things that we did in the 90s that I thought were game changers, and we still use it today. There was I recognize I had a strategic planning process I put in place. And of course, I had brought into the strategic planning our senior leaders. And so I would go out of those planning sessions and then rely on the senior leaders to then spread the word. And I figured out pretty quickly that they only spread the word where they wanted to spread the word, and where they didn't want to spread the word and keep themselves in power, they held it to themselves. And so I thought, this is not working very well. So I said to the team, I sat them all down and I said, guys, I'm not impressed with what I see happening. We got a great strategic planning process here, but for some reason it's not getting through to our people. So I said, I'm going to develop a group of people and I'm going to call them the champions of change. And they're going to be in every department in this organization, and they're not going to be management. And they're going to report directly to me. And they're going to be worked through our HR department, and we're going to ask them questions, and they're going to bring those questions directly up to the top. And then I'm going to have information I want, and I'm going to give it directly down to them to disseminate it to the people. You're not going to be excluded from this process. You're going to be part of it. You're going to see it all. I'm not hiding anything, but I want you to know it's going to be transparent all the way through. And that's what we developed back then. And I got to say, that's probably one of the highlights that our employees say they have every year, is that process that we go through.
And you continue to use it today?
Absolutely. Yeah.
As champions of change. So you've made the kind of process of kind of disseminating and receiving information transparent.
Yes.
And not necessarily filtered, in other words.
Correct. Yeah. You know, it's interesting. We get the last survey last year, we had 200 pages of comments in addition to the survey that was answered. And I didn't get to see those comments or have any information on them till after the Champions of Change group, there's about 23 of them, had already viewed and gone through it. And then they break it down and give it to me. And here's what we think we see in this. And then we go through it. And then we invite two of these people from this group to go to our strategic planning sessions and deliver that information to that group. So it's a piece of what goes into our planning session. So then our employees see that they've been listened to, and they actually see the comments entering into the strategic plan and being acted on.
John, if we reverse roles for a second, and I'm no longer interviewing people for a living, but I'm a candidate to come and join your organization, and I'm really trying to, I've already decided I'm gonna get involved. The offer's been made, it's been accepted, and I'm saying, hey, John, I'm gonna join the organization on Monday. What is the kind of brand I'm going to experience and live? And how am I going to see that? How would you answer that question?
So one of the things that we have at OPPI that we rally ourselves around is a phrase called expect the world from us.
Right.
And so what we hope you see when you come in here is that is going to be enacted two ways. One, in how we operate our business, like we bring product from all around the world to other places all around the world. It's also going to be what you experience when you interact with other people inside OPPI, and how we expect that you'll interact with our customer base. So that's sort of a rallying cry around what we expect from you and what you expect from us. And so I would hope you see that right away. And we set people up with mentors, to make sure that they have a way to navigate their way through that. Because getting on OPPI, we have videos we go through, we have materials we go through, on OPPI and on our culture and how we expect to operate. But then again, you just don't want to leave somebody at that point. So there's going to be a journey for you probably that extends a year, because we kind of think it takes a year for someone joining our organization to kind of figure out all the things we do, how we do them, and why we do them.
Do you get much feedback from, let's call them new hires? I don't know in a year after they've joined if they'd be considered new hires, but your onboarding program literally goes a year, if not longer. What kind of feedback do you get from people about that?
You know what? The feedback we get is actually an element of surprise. And the fact that, you actually do what you say you're going to do. And we feel that the culture that you guys have on paper here is really the culture here. And they feel the warmth. I see all kinds of emails on a regular basis going back. I can't believe the support that I've gotten since I joined the organization. It's fantastic. Everybody makes me feel welcome. Everybody's out to try to help me So that's the feedback I get, which makes me feel good. And I always make a point when I go around to the office tours to kind of just, when we're having dinner with people after a drink or two, just kind of go to the people I know are new and say, so how was your experience, by the way? Because that's an unfiltered, like, that's usually when you get the truth, right?
Right.
So yeah, we have that process. And then of course, you see the results every year in your survey as to how people are feeling about the culture.
Right. Now, John, I know, onboarding, recruiting has been a big, it has to be important when you go from 7 million to well over $1 billion. But last year you rebranded your HR department and team to call it talent and culture. So why was this important, and how was the decision made? And I shouldn't ask too many questions at once. That's against my professional guidelines. but what's the impact been?
Yeah, you know what? So we looked at it and we said, okay, talent, and the HR department is what we call it, human resources in the past, the talent we bring into our organization. What we measured it by, basically, to start with, was how do they fit our culture before we hired them? And how are they going to fit into our culture going forward? And so I said, if this is what's happening here, then they need to be responsible then as sort of guardians of that culture. In addition to obviously I have that responsibility as CEO, but I want to make sure that they are really being responsible for the culture of the organization. So we put the two of those together, and basically I think it was really well received from people who are coming into the organization. The hits we've gotten on our websites, we redid the website on it, both internally and externally, have been monumentous compared to what hits we used to get in it. So it just kind of says to you, what is your organization like? What do you guys think? And you obviously tie the two of those together.
Sounds like there's a lot of listening going on at Oppie in terms of what people think and how they feel.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think that's something I learned, working from the ground up, was that everybody along the way, whether you think it or not, has an opinion. And usually they're better at their job and what they're doing than you are. And so if you want to be successful, you need to listen to whatever roadblocks you might be putting in place that you're not aware of, so that they can give them the tools to do their job better. That's what it's all about.
Yeah. John, when you're looking, you talked about nimble, entrepreneurial, warmth. There's still a family feel there. I've been there. I feel it from the moment you walk in. If you didn't know, if you just got there to know anything about the business, you wouldn't say this is $1 billion global enterprise. Don't take that the wrong way, but you wouldn't know that. So how do you filter that? How do you recruit for that? We tend to, love to say we recruit for fit. We help organizations do it. We think we do it pretty well, but
yeah, it's
not always that easy. And what do you do to ensure that you make that onboarding process a good one by finding the right people?
Yeah, I think that what we do is we just don't have like the HR do the interview, or what you would call talent and culture do the interview. There's a team developed. And so whatever department those people are going to go into, the team of, they say, 4 or 5 people that might be interfacing with that candidate is also part of the process, not initially, but later on. And so before the person's selected, that person also gets to see who they're going to be working with and the type of people they're going to be working with. And then the people that are working with that person say, yeah, I think this person's a fit, or I don't think this person's a fit. And that they're going to be, okay, they're part of the process of learning. They're also going to want to make that person successful.
Interesting. So it's really that cross-functional, cross-level team that kind of makes that decision. And you said something that they tend to be the ones who want to make that, that person successful. Do you actually see that commitment and buy-in once that person's joined?
Yeah, in 2 ways. One, if they get in there and they want to make them successful, but if they feel they've made a mistake, and it doesn't fit, that comes up pretty quick too, because they don't want to be too much egg on their face for too long.
As you look into the future, what do you see as critical to aligning your people to your culture and attracting the talent you need to continue to have the high performance culture you do at Oppie, John?
To be honest, you need to be honest with your people to let them know where you're at, and be collaborative with their leaders and clear on having a compelling vision for the future. Like, where are we going together? Once there's a common understanding, then you need to have a roadmap created focusing on just a few things that matter the most, like shared direction and vision. And then you also need to make sure that everybody recognizes how important all the people and all the jobs in your organization are to your success. And there's no clearer time than today to look at that and say the people you didn't think were really all that important are the most important people we need today. They might be a grocery clerk, they might be the guy picking in the warehouse or picking in the fields, otherwise you're not eating.
Yeah, I think we've all learned that. How does that become, that's a lot different from a $7 million organization to an over billion, largely maybe America's or even domestic at that time, to now a global organization. How do you ensure that a lot of the sharing, the recognition, the sharing of the vision and the values, how do you make sure that's not, broken telephone in such a big organization?
Yeah, that's something you got to work on all the time. You can't ever take it for granted. And you have to make sure you have the open communication with the people throughout and constantly getting the information. So what we do we have our monthly sales or management meetings. All the minutes from those meetings go to all the staff. So, and they get feedback on how we're doing, what the issues are, and where the company's going. And the same thing happens when we do a strat plan. It's out to all the people. I travel around to every office. I deliver it myself personally. I spend some time one-on-one with them, in a social environment after. So we're constantly working on the people having that feeling and understanding. And if you didn't do that, I think there's a very, very strong chance it would be a difficult time to keep that together as we grew like we did. This is so many different areas, but every time I would hear from these people, and this was really something that was scary, but also good. Hey, I went to the other office and I thought I was talking to another John Anderson. So those are critical pieces. I didn't want to be exactly like me, but they were singing the culture. They were saying, this is the way we do things here, and we're proud to do it. The single thing we get the highest recognition for every year on our survey is proud to work at Oppie.
Pride.
Yeah, the pride is there, the individual pride.
Fantastic. John, you've been, I can say personally, and I know many others, and in fact I do, where you are open source code, whether it's on your compensation systems, on your recognition and reward systems, on just about anything you've done, not to mention your own experience in this business or others, because you are in others.
Yes, right. Yeah.
But let me ask you, if you're speaking to an entrepreneur or a young professional manager who's running that $7 million company today, who says, you know what, I want to build $1 billion enterprise and I want to make it high, I want to have a high performance culture. What's the one or two pieces of advice that you'd give that young woman or young man who wants that kind of help?
Yeah, you know what? The critical piece right out of the way is you need to have a vision. You need to know where you want to get to go. And you need to be passionate, extremely passionate about what you're going to do. Because you're going to run into all kinds of negative roadblocks that you haven't even thought about yet. And they're going to come up in front of you and you're going to kind of go, well, I didn't expect that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And it's going to be a roller coaster ride. And there's going to be a lot of times you might self-doubt yourself. My recommendation there is to try to get some outside consultation help to make sure that you understand and feel that you're still going in the right direction, when sometimes internally people might tell you the opposite, just because they're trying to stand in your way. So I think collaboration with everybody is critical. Vision is critical. Passion is critical, and determination. And you know what? Energy. You've got to have a lot of energy. That's critical to be able to make it.
Well, and you talked about mentorship as well. And I know you've been a mentor to many, I would say, including myself. But again, the shared values, purpose, passion, vision, mentorship, a lot of communication and listening. And of course, your mentorship goes on with multiple people up until kind of a year, if not further. That's an incredible commitment to bringing people on board. Most organizations, would probably say, okay, they're off and running. We're at 60 days, 90 days, whatever it is. they've made it past the hurdle and now they're, turning the corner and into the race. So that's pretty exceptional. John, if you look, last question for you, if you look into the future, what do you think is going to be the number one determinant of Oppie's success from the $1 billion they are today to whatever we're going to be talking about 5, 7, 9, 10 years from now? What's going to be the number one driver that will get them there?
So my opinion, I've said to the crew, I said, one of the things we want to do is we want to simplify our business. We want to adapt to the future. And then we want to look for opportunity. And adaptation is, I think, one of the biggest things we're going to have to face in the next little while as this world's changing at such a rapid rate. I don't believe it's the smartest companies that survive the longest. I think it's the ones that are the most adaptable. And so therefore, I think that's a major critical piece of your culture going forward. You have to have somebody that wants to adapt and change and grasps and with open arms change. Because
well, let me tell you,
like it or not.
This is a message we all need to hear, because I think we're all being forced to one degree or another, whether it's just in terms of how we're working, let alone what we're doing, to adapt right now. And it is a challenge, not just in terms of having the passion and energy and drive to get through it, but the fortitude and grit to keep to it or to keep adapting. So, John, thank you. This has been fantastic. We appreciate all the time that not only do you give to our viewers and listeners here, but that you've given to Canada's Most Admired and anyone who just asked for your help. So thanks again to our guest, John Anderson of the Oppenheimer Group.
Thank you, Marty. Pleasure to be with you today. Be safe.
Pleasure's been ours. And join us next week for another episode of Building High Performance Cultures. In the meantime, if you want to learn more about the topic, please visit waterstonehc.com. Thank you.